Hey everyone, and welcome to A Question to the Teacher. In this series, we're going to ask and try to answer some of the questions that I wish I would have known to ask when I was starting out teaching. And here's our question for the day.
Hey everyone, today's April 16th, 2018, and our question for today comes from my friend in Japan. I asks, Brian, my classroom is a little bit stale, a little bit bored, and I'm wondering if a shake-up will bring some new life into my classroom. Now, I can tell you that if you're teaching in the same classroom with the same floor plan and the same seating arrangement every class, things are going to get stale. Now, the way that you have your classroom set up has a direct impact on what you do and how you do it. But there are so many different ways to do it that I want to take some time in this video to go through the step-by-step process of laying out your classroom. What works, what doesn't work, what are some strengths, what are some weaknesses of each seating arrangement that I use. So, hang tight and let's see which works best for you.
The aim of trying different classroom layouts is to experiment with different arrangements of seats, tables, desks, and students to figure out which type of setup works best with which type of activity. When I'm planning my activities, I often try to think about what type of classroom layout I want to use. One of the easiest ways to think about it is to visualize it. One of the easiest ways to visualize it is with a poster. So at my desk, I have this poster printed out and taped on the wall next to my computer. It helps me to figure out what I want my classroom to look like while I'm doing different activities.
Now don't get me wrong. The traditional classroom layout with rows of fixed desks, all facing the front, may be appropriate for teacher-centered explanations, board work, and quiet individual work, but it's arguably less suitable for communicative or task-based work. So, before you decide on how you want to sit, you've got to figure out what you want to accomplish. Now, the traditional seating arrangement that we all grew up with is perfectly fine. It has its merits. But a teacher needs to keep in mind the possibility of occasionally changing the seating arrangements. Sometimes this will happen because you need to do so for a specific activity. At other times, change for its own sake may be justification enough. You might just feel like you need to stir the pot a little bit. Try to think about it from the learner's perspective. Having a new view, new eye contact, and new people next to you, it may in some small way help to keep their interest alive and motivation higher. I mean, how long would you want to be sitting in your classroom? The first arrangement I recommend is a semicircle or a U, because this allows learners to make eye contact and communicate with each other. There can also be a number of rows if needed. If you've got a larger class, you just add an additional row. A tipped U is a small modification on the regular semicircle. It reduces the rigid right angles of most classrooms. Now, this can feel more informal, yet still provide desk space. Number 3 pulls the tables together to form a large table and sits learners around it. Now, this may increase the feeling of cooperation and working together on a single task. Number 4 is zones. If you have the luxury of a large enough classroom and there are spare chairs, you can arrange different areas within the room. A line of seats up front facing the board, others around tables at the back of the room, a shared open discussion or mingling area in the middle. And during certain stages of a lesson, students may be able to move from zone to zone, depending on what they need to do. I love this open style for station work classes. Number 5 is a full circle. This is a very democratic arrangement, allowing everyone to see everyone else. Number 6 is a rectangular arrangement. Arrange rows of desks and seats around all 4 edges of the room, or closer in, allowing space to walk behind the seats. This sets up an inside perimeter and an outside perimeter. Number 7 is curved rows. Rather than the typical straight line rows, try curving the lines a little, perhaps facing a long wall of the room. This breaks up the monotony of the line and also allows for slightly better viewing lines of the teacher, the blackboard, and the television. Number 8 is an arrowhead, a shape made of diagonal rows with the arrow pointing towards the back of the class. This permits more eye contact. It also allows more open space at the front of the room, which you could use for mingling activities or for proximal classroom management. You can get a lot closer to a lot more students a lot more of the time with this type of seating arrangement. Number 9 is diagonal. You keep the traditional rows, but you angle them a little so they leave a large diagonal space in one corner at the front. This is another way of creating a little more working space at the front of the class. Number 10 is the reverse. If there's enough space in your room, try putting the tables behind the chairs. This means that students can face you without the intervening barrier. When they need to write at length or have another need for the tables, they can simply turn their chairs around and work with their backs to the teacher. I like this because it makes a much more informal setting. Number 11 is a little radical. No tables. You might try working with groups without any tables. You'll find that this frees up a lot of space in the room, which you can then exploit for speaking activities, games, simulations, and so on. And finally, one of my very favorites, especially for speed dating speaking activities, is called facing. You simply turn desks to face each other, rather than all facing the front. This way, students are forced to make eye contact, they're forced to be in close proximity, and they're also forced to observe each other's body language and facial expressions more closely. Whichever seating arrangement you choose to make use of, try to see the room from a student's perspective. Don't forget that each chair produces a totally different and unique experience. After all the students have gone home, take a few minutes to view your classroom from their point of view. Choose 3 or 4 random students' desks at different places around the class and sit in them for a minute or so. Imagine yourself up at the board and watch how they would see class. And finally, a few more things to consider about classroom seating arrangements. What moves? Do the chairs move? Do the desks move? Did the desks and chairs move? Do students move with their books? Do they take their pencil case? Does their bag stay at their own desk? These are things that you need to think about before you decide on which seating arrangement you're going to use. Figure out the arrangement and then figure out what moves, the desks or the kids. Once you figure out what moves, the next thing is to figure out how it all moves. And I recommend that nothing moves until you've explained how everything moves. I like to give a detailed, step-by-step explanation of what students should do, how they should do it, and when they start. I'll always tell students, stand up, push in your chairs, get your paper and pencil in and ready. And in 3, 2, 1. Now in this video, I've shown you some classic classroom layouts, but I've saved the best for last. This arrangement is called a double E, as it looks like 2 E's facing each other. I love this setup because it has all students with their eyes on me, but it maximizes my teacher walking pathways. I can get to any student in the classroom in about 5 to 7 seconds, and that is classroom management. And in closing, a word of advice about planning. When you work hard outside of the classroom to figure out what you want to do, why you want to do it, and most importantly, how, it makes your thinking inside the classroom so much easier. I always say, work hard when the classroom's empty, and then you can work easy when it's full. Try to remember that your days are long, but the years are short. Plan well, and you'll have good classes.